There's everybody. Oh, yeah. Here, you like pens. That pen? You can have that. Okay. Well, hey, everybody. To start off, just want to say hello to the people who watch on YouTube. We do these live on Facebook Monday through Friday, and they get posted to YouTube every day. And I don't really, say hi to those people very often. But recently, there's been lots of people asking questions and posting as we go through some of these Old Testament laws. And it's a good reminder for all of us that these studies aren't something where I prepare for and plan to go in depth on every topic. Every day I open the Bible and you're opening it as early as I'm opening it. And we're just walking through these things. And so I don't always intend to give the full, in depth, every rabbit trail followed answer to these things. And so, like when we talked about slavery the other day, I touched on some stuff and I had people ask me lots of questions. And so I went deeper and tried to answer some of those questions. And all that said, though, this is supposed to be kind of more of a devotional teaching. But we hit topics like today, animal control laws is what my Bible says we're starting at. And what could be more exciting than that? So in verse 28 of Exodus 21, it says, if an ox gores a man or a woman to death, then the ox shall be surely stoned, and its flesh shall not be eaten, but the owner of the ox shall be acquitted. But if the ox tended to thrust with its horns in times past, and it was made known to its owner, and it has not been kept confined, so that it has killed a man or a woman, the ox shall be stoned, and its owner also shall be put to death. If there is imposed on him a sum of money that he shall pay to redeem his life, whatever is imposed on him, whether it has gored a son or a daughter, according to this judgment it shall be done to him. If the ox gores a male or female servant, he shall give to their master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned. So, one thing about the Old Testament laws was they were really practical in so many ways. Now, they lived in a different time period than we. Yeah, I know. They lived in a different time period than we do. Some of this stuff, especially like when we were talking about the servants and the slaves, whatnot, in the early part of the chapter, it's hard because we're coming from our time period, looking back, right? This is like 3,500 years ago that this law was given. And we're trying to wrap our minds around it, but some of it still works today. That's my drink. You're not getting that. She wants the coffee. It's too hot. So, the idea is simple. If the ox kills someone, you kill the ox. I mean, obviously at this point, and that's going to be that's always the case, right? The ox kills someone, you kill the ox. But if people knew, the owners knew that the ox was a danger, well, then the owner's in trouble now. People being held accountable and responsible. We live in this crazy age today where it's just like, I don't know. It's just people getting off the hook for craziness, and then people getting busted and arrested and sued for craziness. Oh, it's like you can be a rapist and get set free, and you can bake a cake and you can be fined and thrown in prison. So it's just kind of, the days we live in are insane. We don't have this practical advice right here. And so they just give the consequences. There we go. For instance, it's a death penalty, but if the family says, hey, if you pay this much money, you can live, which you should be thankful for that option. And if it's a servant, well, 30 shekels of silver is the price for a gored servant. Now, that's, why only 30 shekel? Well, here's the other thing. God made that as the price. Why? Is it because a servant's only worth 30 shekels of silver? Or is it because in about 1,500 years, a servant is going to be gored and pierced through And the price that was paid for him was 30 shekels of silver. Remember, that's the price that Judas was paid to betray Jesus and send him to the cross. And so sometimes with God's laws, they're not always just practical, but there's some reason why God picked these things. He's like, well, this is just going to be the number, and there's a reason for it, because it's going to be a foreshadowing of something that is to come. So that's a cool thing to know, too, is that you're distracting the people. How are they supposed to listen to me if they're staring at your pretty face? Think about that, okay? Yeah, exactly. So, there's that. Now, okay, verse 33. If a man opens a pit or if a man digs a pit, does not cover it, and an ox or donkey falls in it, the owner of the pit shall make it good. He shall give money to the owner, but the dead animal shall be his. So it's kind of like he caught it. Well, he pays for it, but hey, I'm paying for it, but I get to keep it because I just paid for it. So, and then it says, if one man's ox hurts another's so that it dies, then they shall sell the live ox and divide the money from it, and the dead ox they shall also divide. So this is supposed to be like two animals, because it's going to go in here. If it was known that the ox tended to thrust in times past, and its owner is not kept it confined, then he shall surely pay ox for ox, and the dead animal shall be his own. And so it's kind of the idea of like, again, accidents happen. And the Bible gets that. That accidents happen. And God makes it right. But when we know that accidents happen and you haven't taken care of it, well, now we have an issue. And so this kind of reminds me a little bit of what I was talking about this last Sunday, how I have more of a general concern about someone who is defending sin, saying, well, I don't think that's sinful, or I don't think that's a problem. And I said, I would rather be working with someone who has stumbled and given into smoking pot, looking at porn, whatever it may be, than someone who has not stumbled and yet says that it would have been okay if they had. See, here's a hard issue. Yeah. And here's a person who's stumbling in an area that they struggle in. We all struggle with stuff. We all stumble in areas. And we need to remember that when you struggle with an outburst of wrath or the sharing of gossip, you're just like the person who looked at porn or smoked pot. They're all sins. They all need to be repented of. But we all have a tendency to be drawn to sin when we're in the flesh, when we're frustrated, when we're angry. And so all of that said, though, we are responsible. I'm tying this in, like, where is he going with this? You see, today we were talking about what happens if an ox gores a man or someone else's ox. Well, it's like accidents happen. People mess up. And so God says, we deal with that. We try and settle it. We try and fix the problem, right? And we deal with it. But when you know you're prone to falling in a certain area and you have not confined it, well, now we do have a bigger problem here. You see, when you know you're prone to pornography, that's a great example. Not because it's the worst sin, but because actually it at least has some really effective fences. There is phone software, computer and tablet software that you can get and put on your device so that if you look up anything questionable, it sends out text messages and emails and whatnot. And I know people, it's funny, like I've talked to some guys before about that and they're like, you mean it's going to text my mom? I go, yeah, it's going to text your mom. Well, I don't want that. Now we have a problem. Because you told me that you were struggling and you wanted help. Well, yeah, but I don't want my mom. Doesn't sound like you really want help then, does it? It sounds like you want to get it off your chest, but you don't actually want to solve the problem. And so here's where we find, that if we know we have a tendency to fall into sin, just like the ox, right? It's known in times past that this ox would thrust. It has a tendency to be aggressive. Well, then we need to put a fence around the ox so we can't let it out. Okay, when we know that we have tendencies to fall into certain sins, we need to set up accountability. And I wish every sin had an app. So that's why I said I use pornography and the monitoring software, because it's like effective. There's actually a really good fencing system for that. Chill. There we go. She's so obedient. But if you struggle with anger, oh man, there's just not a great fence for that, is there? If you struggle with gossiping and bad attitudes and slander, if you struggle with alcohol, well, it's like, one simple one is this. If you struggle with alcohol, you better not keep alcohol in the house, right? That's a practical fence. If you struggle with smoking pot, well, not only should you, not ever have pot in the house, but you should probably throw away the pipe and throw away anything else that helps you get there. And it is. If you struggle with some kind of an attitude, like anger or gossip, slander, whatever it may be, maybe your fence is simply talking to 1, 2, or 3, one of which is probably your spouse, people, and just tell them straight up, hey, listen, I know I'm going to hate you when you come to tell me this. But right now, while I have a clarity of mind, I want to tell you that I struggle with this. And if you see me doing this, I want you to call me out. I want you to be my fence. And in the moment, I'm probably going to not like you, and I'm probably going to deny whatever you're trying to tell me. But right now, while I have a clear mind, I'm telling you, I need a fence. I need help from someone I trust. And so once I start getting in my flesh and I start crossing that line, remind me, this is that line, that fence that you wanted me to set up. And let me know when I've crossed it, so that I can at least be aware and called out and realize when I'm in rebellion and when I'm in transgression. And so God forgives mess ups and mistakes. That's all here in these animal control laws. And yet when we know that there's a tendency to thrust and we don't keep it confined, that does change the situation. We're responsible to try and put up those fences to keep our wild oxes in check. So there's a fun application of the animal control laws of Exodus 21. God bless you guys. I will see you guys around. It's Tuesday, youth Christmas party. It's the one time a year where we act like we're all the other youth groups and we play games and eat snacks. Okay, you guys take care. I will see you guys around. And pray about where maybe you need to set up some fences. Was that good? Ellie approves. Have a great day, guys.